Talking Point is on another home raid. This time, we're taking away your kitchen sponges. Why? Tamara wants to know how often we should change our kitchen sponges. And Milo wants to find out, are the newfangled washing devices on the market worth the switch from the sponge we know and love? Milo and Tamara, this episode is for you.
Hi, I'm from Talking Point and I'm here to collect your kitchen sponge.
Oh, okay, come on in.
So this is the sponge that we use, the regular green and yellow sponge that you can get very easily for 20 cents or 50 cents.
This is the sponge that we normally use, the normal run-of-the-mill 3 for $1 kind. Yeah.
Use a typical yellow sponge with the green scrubber on top.
So how often do you change it?
Usually we change it 2 to 3 months, especially when it gets visibly dirty, like right now.
Okay.
We change our sponge about every 2 weeks.
We will change it quite often. Once we feel that it's a bit grainy or greasy to the touch, we'll change it.
So how clean do you think your sponge is?
Pretty clean.
Oh, I think it's gonna be quite filthy.
Okay lah, I don't see any stains in the sponge. I think it's like quite clean, right?
Well, we did use the sponge together with the dishwashing liquid, so I guess that process may have killed off some of the germs and bacteria.
We also asked you, how often do you change your kitchen sponges? More than 900 of you replied. 41% say you change your kitchen sponge only after 3 months or longer. Another 41% switch theirs out monthly. The minority? Well, 13% of you are changing your kitchen sponges out every 2 weeks. And a mere 5% change sponges every week. Can we really use our sponges for as long as most of us do? To find out, I'm sending 9 sponge samples to a lab. And yes, I am adding in my own sponge too. Exactly how dirty are our sponges?
This sponge over right at this corner has 3.4 million bacteria inside it. For comparison, this sponge right at this corner here is the cleanest sponge at just a mere 890 bacteria inside. And for comparison, we actually tested a toilet seat from a house. The toilet seat is actually cleaner than the sponge here.
How is that even possible?
Because the toilet seats, we actually clean them very thoroughly. And the toilet seat, if you notice, is usually very smooth, right? So it's actually very easy to clean. Whereas your sponge has many tiny little holes inside that trap a lot of things.
Ew. Just the thought of it is very gross. Very, very gross. Were there any worrying results that you found?
Yes, actually, we found in some of the sponges, right, very high numbers of Staphylococcus aureus. That means that we are leaving behind a lot of our skin bacteria on the sponge after we're done washing our dishes. While it can cause food poisoning, I think the more worrying thing is that it affects our skin hygiene. It's one of the bacteria responsible for giving us pimples and acne, and we don't want too much of that around us. So let's talk about the dirtiest sponge and maybe the factors as to why it's the dirtiest. So as you can see here, it's actually stored next to another sponge, and that can contribute to cross-contamination. Also, it's stored, from what I can see, inside the sink. And so that means every time someone uses the tap, there's water splashing onto the sponges, and bacteria love water, so the sponge is like a haven for the bacteria to grow.
Okay, well, this is worrying because this is how most of us store our sponges in the kitchen sink as well. What else do you test for?
We also tested for yeast and molds, and we actually found that a lot of sponges had high yeast and mold counts. So example, for this sponge right here, we actually found almost 700,000 yeast and mold inside. For comparison, if let's say you test, for example, your household air for yeast and molds, I don't think you should get more than 30 yeast and mold counts.
Oh dear. What's the worst that can happen if I have yeast and mold on my sponge?
Yeast and molds can stay not just on your sponge, but also on your plates or anything else you use a sponge on for a really long time. And if you eat that, there are some yeast and molds that may make you sick. So this is your sponge.
You're going to tell me that it's exceptionally clean, right? Give me the results.
Your sponge, the top tier, the dirtiest of the lot. And in fact, if I could, I'll put it at the extra tier.
Why? Wait. How many bacteria did you find on my sponge?
23 million bacteria. Almost 10 times the dirtiest sponge among this lot.
You can call me dirty, Diana.
Do you actually let your sponge dry out completely?
I can't. I mean, it's impossible because there is only one kitchen and we have to keep washing throughout the day. So honestly, during the day, it's impossible for me to dry out the sponge.
And how often do you cook, or have meals at home?
Very often. We cook at least 2 meals a day, lunch and dinner, and there's food preparation and all that.
So that includes raw food, right?
Yeah.
So raw food is full of bacteria, and when you use your sponge to clean utensils to handle raw food and cooked food, that's basically loading up the sponge full of bacteria.
Wait, very important question. Did you find any of the wicked bacteria, the baddest bacteria in my sponge?
Fortunately, no. There's no baddest of the bad bacteria inside.
Okay, that's good to know because I was wondering how is it that me and my loved ones are not falling sick every other week from food poisoning?
The bacteria that give you food poisoning, are not inside your sponge. So that's why you're not getting sick all the time, even though you're using a sponge loaded full of bacteria.
Okay, that's a consolation. But the sheer amount of bacteria found in my sponge is still freaking me out. I'm going to have to think about storing my sponge a different way, in between use. It's time to reveal the results to our viewers. The total microbial count on your sponge, which includes bacteria as well as fungi, is 890. Oh, is it?
Is that a lot?
High.
Wow.
That puts you in the cleanest household. That's a relief. Okay, well done. How often do you use the sponge?
Maybe just 1 or 2 meals per week where we will cook ourselves. So maybe the usage, our usage is not as high.
Your kitchen sponge was found to have the second most bacterial count of the 9 houses that we went. Yeah, 2.9 million microbial count. And then for the total yeast and mold is the third highest, which is 410,000.
Mansura, your total microbial count is 960,000.
Is that good or bad?
Good question. So you are actually doing very well compared to the average.
It's quite clean, isn't it? Yeah, the sponge. I'm quite relieved because we change the sponge quite frequently.
I have not so good news though. Your yeast and mold count is 670,000, which is the highest in all the households that we sampled.
That's surprising.
Let's take a closer look at the results. I've plotted all the data from the 10 samples on this line graph. Generally, sponges under 10 days old have lower levels of bacteria, yeast and mold, after which most contamination levels rose and stabilized between 2 to 4 million. So the data seems to support a weekly sponge replacement to avoid higher contamination levels. But there is an outlier, my sponge. At just 7 days old, it has contamination levels of a whopping 23 million, which seems to suggest that proper sponge care such as rinsing and drying is critical to prevent extreme contamination even within 7 days. Why do our kitchen sponges harbor so much bacteria and mold? Well, let me show you. It's dark, damp, and filled with tunnels and crevices. So it's hard for your detergent to remove all traces of bacteria. It's a complete nightmare for hygiene. In other words, bacteria party. And those food bits that end up on your kitchen sponges, well, they're not just feeding you, they're also helping the bacteria to thrive. With traditional sponges being so terribly effective at trapping bacteria, it's no surprise that many companies are now pushing for alternatives, tools designed to resist microbial growth. So in our test, we've lined up 5 contenders: an antimicrobial sponge, a long-lasting cleaning sponge designed for extended use, a silicone sponge, a Swedish dishcloth, and a classic dishwashing brush. Are they good enough to replace the dish sponges we know and love? Let's find out. Okay, let's break down some of the sponge alternatives on the market and what each one promises. This looks like a regular sponge, but it's not. It claims to be infused with antimicrobial agents, which inhibit some bacterial growth. It also claims to not trap so much food, and as we know, the bacteria in the sponge are going to need the food to multiply. But here's the catch. I paid $45 for 4 of these. This doesn't quite look like the regular sponge. In fact, it's made of synthetic materials that again claims to be antimicrobial. It also says that it's the only sponge that you will ever need because you don't have to replace it. It will last on and on and on. $15. Next, this sponge is made of silicone. It's super flexible, less absorbent, I think a lot less absorbent than a regular sponge, which means it is easier to rinse and clean. Does it mean that it actually traps less bacteria? The price tag, $5. This is a Swedish dishcloth. Think of it as a cross between a sponge and a dishcloth. It claims to dry really quickly. Not surprising given its surface area and the fact that it's actually quite thin. The price tag, $1 each. The classic dish brush. I never knew that you could use dish to wash your plates, but apparently you can. And it's so hard, I bet you can get out a lot of stubborn stains. So could this be a bacteria buster? Price tag, $1 each. To put these sponge alternatives to the test, I roped in the folks at Pack Labs. They usually conduct animal and human nutrition analysis, so this may be one of the strangest requests they've ever got. Each tool, including the traditional kitchen sponge, will be used to wash dirty dishes 5 times a day for 3 days straight. Conditions designed to replicate 1 week's worth of heavy washing in the household. After every wash, the lab techs will give them a good squeeze or shake, just like you might at home, and leave them out to air dry naturally. And at the end of day 5, all 6 tools, plus their unused controls, will be tested for how much bacteria they contain. It's dishwashing down to a science. It's been 5 days, and our test results are out.
So, Diana, I'm going to show you the results of the bacteria count that we did for the various sponges. Make a guess, which do you think is the dirtiest?
Oh my gosh, I cannot decide whether this one is the dirtiest. So disgusting. I'm guessing that it is this sponge because it's supposed to stick with you, stay with you forever, which probably means that the bacteria will also stay with me forever and ever. Am I right?
Yes, you are right. Very good guess.
So tell me, what did you find inside this sponge?
Relative to the other sponges, it holds the highest bacterial count. It is understandable from the design. It's very difficult to dislodge the food particles from the sponge. So which one do you think is the cleanest sponge?
I think the cleanest sponge is actually the silicone sponge because I don't see that it can trap bacteria and it doesn't seem very absorbent.
Very close to the answer. The cleanest one is actually the dishwashing brush.
No!
Yes.
How is it that this had the lowest bacterial count?
As you can see from the design, the results, they don't lodge as much food particles as the other sponges. So the less food particles, the less bacterial growth. Then the next one, the smudge sponge.
Now this one is interesting. I mean, what's so smart about a sponge? But apparently this one is antimicrobial, that's the claim.
For the smudge sponge, we still are able to detect quite a lot of bacteria, but it is at least 10-fold lesser than the other sponge.
Tell me how the Swedish cloth performed.
For the Swedish sponge, unlike the brush or the silicone brush, you can see that it's very, very absorbent. So the more absorbent it is, the easier it is for the cloth to retain the food particles.
So knowing what we know now about the results, what is the thing that you have learned about using sponges?
You have to clean it regularly.
So what you're saying is that regardless of what kind of cleaning equipment you use, you are going to have to do some maintenance.
Correct.
Most of the alternatives we tested turned out to be cleaner than the typical yellow and green kitchen sponge. But surprisingly, the long-lasting sponge came out loaded with the most bacteria. It had even more bacteria than our regular sponge. Next was the Swedish dishcloth. Then the antimicrobial sponge. The silicone sponge did much better. And the cleanest of all, the dishwashing brush. So if hygiene matters to you, the brush is your safest bet. But if you still want to stick to your traditional sponge, let's talk maintenance. Go online and you'd find videos like these.
For more intense germs, grab a bowl and mix 1 quart of hot water with 3 tablespoons of bleach.
From bleaching your kitchen sponge to boiling.
Give it a quick dip in a pot of boiling water.
And even using vinegar. This article even suggests using UV light. If kitchen sponges are a hotbed for bacteria and mold, could these sponge cleaning methods make a difference? I'm here at the Republic Polytechnic's School of Applied Sciences, and I'll be teaming up with microbiologist Hui Cheng to put some sponge cleaning remedies to the test. Hi Hui Cheng, I'm set. How are we doing
Hi,
this?
Diana. Today we are actually testing out 4 different cleaning methods for sponges. One of the methods that people commonly use will be using household vinegar, which is 5% acetic acid, and they typically will soak it for about 15 to 20 minutes. In method number 2, we are using diluted bleach, which is actually used by many households, and bleach is something is readily available at home. And let's move on to the third method that we'll be trying today, which is actually a home-based UV sterilizer that you can purchase online.
In the olden days, we just boil them. What's wrong with boiling?
In fact, we are actually testing the trial and tested method, which is using boiling water.
Okay, I can't wait to find out if these actually work. Hui Cheng starts by taking a reading of the general bacterial and fungi count on a 3-week-old sponge.
That's really high.
This will be the baseline bacterial count we will be comparing our cleaned up sponges with.
So after the 4 cleaning methods, we will take a look at the reading again.
Okay, let's get started.
We are done and ready to start the test now.
Right, the moment of truth.
All right.
This is the UV sanitizer.
Okay, in it go.
Whoa! This is coming in for the UV sanitizer. Not bad. Let me take it down.
In the meantime, let me move on to the second one.
This was hot water. A humongous drop. I am quite impressed. Okay, let's go down with it.
This is for the bleach. Oh. And our very last one.
Vinegar. Based on the results, can I then conclude that the UV sterilizer is the least effective method in bringing down the bacteria count?
Essentially, yes. Okay, because UV, based on the working principle, they actually only sterilize the surface of the area that touches the UV rays.
So the million-dollar question is, since my bacteria count has dropped for all these methods, can I keep using my sponge as long as I maintain them?
Answer is both yes and no, because your bacteria count is now reduced, and over time, if you were to maintain it, you will be able to continuously use it. But however, the heating itself, in the case of a hot water, may actually destroy the polymer structures that the sponges is made of.
When the sponge is disintegrated from, let's say, boiling too many times,
it will get very soft. It may not do the cleaning what it's supposed to be doing.
Diana, now that you know how dirty your kitchen sponges are, what are you going to do differently from now on?
I'm still going to be changing my sponge on a weekly basis, but I am introducing 2 new things. One, at the end of the day, I will be washing my sponge with hot water. And 2, I will be drying my sponge in an open space overnight, just to kill more bacteria, you know. It does involve slight changes to my kitchen operations, but I think it's well worth it. So feel free to sponge off me for those ideas. Die, bacteria!